Hej allihopa och välkommen till Pengaflödet-podcasten. Mitt namn är Emily.
Och mitt namn är Nanna.
Vi håller på med fastighetsinvesteringar i Storbritannien. Och den här podden kommer handla om just detta och vi kommer varje vecka ta upp relevanta ämnen och intervjua personer som vi finner inspirerande.
Hej och välkomna till Pengaflödet-podcasten. Today we have John. How is it?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Yeah, good. Coming to you from wet and windy Wales. It doesn't feel like August here.
Here it's sunny. I think it's 23 degrees.
Oh, stop it now. It's nothing like that here. I think 16 degrees at best with plenty of water falling from the clouds and a bit of wind just for good measure. So definitely not beach weather.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean, you have nice beaches otherwise in Swansea and etc.
Yeah. This area is full of we've got Gower and all along the coast of Wales. It's lovely beaches, but full of puddles, unfortunately. We do occasionally have nice weather. It doesn't always rain here, but it does rain a fair bit.
People always say to me, it always rains in Wales.
We just get. I think it probably rains just about as much as everywhere else in the UK. It's just that it's a lot more violent, the rain. It seems to come at you from all directions, and it's heavy. So yeah, we're well versed in dealing with rainfall down in these parts.
No, I thought today would be a great episode because we have some listeners that invest obviously in UK or interested in investing in UK, and a letting agent is very, very important. And who else isn't better to ask than you then, I thought.
Wow, we'll see.
So I thought maybe you could tell me about your background.
Yeah, sure. So my background was I was a poor kid who grew up in Liverpool. I'd never had any money. All my family told me to work really hard, so I did. Went on and I went to university, got qualifications, went and worked in the retail industry, climbed the greasy ladder of the corporate world. Did pretty much every procurement, sourcing of products, and then eventually moved into data and insights. And I had a good long spell in doing market research and insights for lots of food manufacturers. Got to a point where I didn't want to do that anymore. So I knew that property was an excellent way to provide income for yourself and to put you a good place to put money. Certainly was at that time. So I did that. I left the corporate world, bought enough properties to cover my outgoings and became a landlord. And in doing so, ventured off into a number of different areas. But one of the things I did do is I set up an estate agency. So for 5 years this year, I've been an estate agent. I am stepping away from estate agency, but I'm still heavily involved, obviously, with my own portfolio. And with working with others, but it's more the understanding of what you should use your letting agent for, which I think is probably my specialism, because that's why I set up an estate agency in the first place, because I needed it to do a particular list or particular types of things that are relevant to me as a landlord and as a property investor. I'm not a property seller, which is how most estate agents seem to be set up. So that gets me to where I am today, really. A property investor. Provide insights and provide a lot of market research into the property market, and obviously also involved in property management too. So however I can help, I will try to help.
So may I ask about your portfolio? It seems like you've done this a while then.
Yeah, so my portfolio, I've got standard, there's so many different terms, so you'll excuse me, I'll use the ones that I prefer to use, but they may be different for other people. But I have standard buy-to-let properties, which are just normal houses, generally 2, 3 and 4 bedroom. I have got a couple of 5-bedroom properties, which I let on an AST basis. And they're probably my favourite properties. I also have a stock or portfolio of HMOs, so they're houses of multiple occupation, what we would traditionally call student houses, although they're not all let to students, some are let professionally. And I also have some land, which, to be honest with you, I'm just banking at the moment, and I also invest in commercial properties, one of which I'm sat in right now on this call. So yeah, quite a varied portfolio, and through my portfolio, I think I've pretty much touched on most areas of property over the years, which is quite helpful when it comes to knowing what's happening in property markets.
Yeah, you seem like you quite safe then, that you have variety. So if one market doesn't go well, then you have the other one. So,
and that's one of the things that bugs me about the property industry, and particularly property training, because everybody talks about the need for a strategy. So I'll hear a lot of people say my strategy is HMOs, or my strategy is flips, and they're not strategies. They're just they're not strategic in any way at all. My strategy is to minimize risk. So I'm not interested in having anything risky. So by having a diverse portfolio, I'm able to weather any storm. So a good example of that was back in, what was it, February, March, when we went into lockdown in the UK. I fortunately had quite a diverse portfolio. Now my HMO properties are roughly about 60% of my tenants had to leave, as they had to return to their countries where their home was, if they were on fixed term contracts or students. I lost a large number of my tenants overnight. But fortunately, because I had the rest of the portfolio, I had sufficient cash flow to weather the storm. Unlike a lot of landlords who probably find, particularly if they've got HMOs at the moment, the situation is pretty dire in a lot of cities and in a lot of universities. And again, that's something that I preach and teach. It's important that you have a diversity in your business plan, and not everybody does.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's a business. People forget that this is a business, and it is.
So one of my favorite ones is, or favorite things, is when I tend to have regular get-togethers with people in terms of property. I do one-day meetings and stuff like that. And one of the first questions I ask is, "What's your business plan?" And I just get looks of bewilderment. Nobody's got a business plan, and I think to myself, "For goodness me, if you're planning on buying, let's go conservative. If you're going to spend £250,000 on property, you're going to make a £250,000 investment, and that's going to get you a pretty standard property. It might get you a couple of properties depending on the regions that you invest in, but nevertheless, it's not going to be a massive portfolio. But it's still £250,000. Now, if you went to any other business or any other marketplace and said, "I'm going to spend £250,000 of my money," or you said, "I'm going to spend £250,000 of somebody else's money," like the banks, you pretty damn sure need to have a business plan, a robust business plan.
Yeah.
One that considers, and nobody has a clue. They tend to just say to me, "Oh, well, I've been on such and such a course, done such and such a bit of training, and I know what I'm doing." And yet they're not qualified to negotiate. They're not qualified in finance. They're just winging it and don't have a business plan to put up. And I just find that astonishing that people can make such huge risks and make such huge gambles in the property market without having any insight or any form of business plan. I know we spoke quite at length about this when we met up online a few months ago. It's the importance of having data and having knowledge as part of your business plan. It's just everything. Even to this day, I can't work out why people will go and buy anything without having access to insights and data, because that's my background. That's what I did in corporate world for years, and that's what I've done with my own portfolio. Why would you buy a property that's worth 100, 200, 300,000 pounds and not have an idea of what's likely to happen to the market in which that property sits over the next year or two? It's just bizarre to me.
I totally agree with you, and I'm totally the same. I want to know about the area, about what's happening, everything, because like you say, it's even if it's your own money or if it's someone who invests in you, you have to take care of it. It's been like hard work, sweat, tears, and everything that put in, and then you just give that money away so easily. I never can understand that part, but that's just me.
Well, some people like to gamble, but personally, I like to run a business. So if you want to gamble, and carry on gambling in property, but if you want to run a business, you've got to use data and insights, and I think the market's moving. I think people are catching up. Certainly, some of the people that have come at me and spent time with me, I think they realise that it's not as easy as it used to be. Investing in property now, even just compared to 2 or 3 years ago, is radically different. But yet, a lot of the training in our industry is still geared toward techniques that were used sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they're just gone now. They don't work anymore. You keep spending money if you want to, and try these old-fashioned techniques, or you can use data and insight and understand markets and make much more money much more quickly with much less effort. And that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, definitely. So that goes to the next question. What does a letting agent do? If you could explain that for the listeners.
What does a letting agent do? It depends on the letting agent, but what you should, I suppose, to sort of slightly rephrase the question, what should your letting agent do, I suppose, is probably the most important question you can ask yourself as an investor. First of all, none of us are investing for another job. Yeah, we don't want more work, we want less work. So the first thing first, you've got to understand that a letting agent is your employee. They are employed by you to do work. So you should treat them as such. So if you just leave everything to them, they will do nothing, which is what I tend to find most employed people do if you don't set them specific targets and specific tasks to complete. So don't just assume that a letting agent will do everything that you want them to do. Be open with them, share your business plan with them, and they should act on your business plan. So sort of rule number one is make sure that they understand what you expect from them and communicate it properly, and then make sure that they will do it. Letting agents are also extremely good at minimizing the risk to you as a property investor. So you want to make sure that your letting agent is qualified to do what they're saying that they're doing, and you'd be surprised some of the larger ones aren't. Some of the larger agents aren't. Sometimes some of the smaller ones that offer a better service, but you've got to do your own checks. I think one of the things in the UK is HHSRS, which very few people are aware of. That's is the Housing Health and Safety Rating System. So HHSRS is something that your letting agent should understand. If you're speaking to a letting agent and they look at you blindly when you mention HHSRS, then they're probably not going to do a great job managing your property.
Red flags.
If they do understand it, yeah. So their job is to take the risk away from you. HHSRS, that's a safety rating system for houses that they have to maintain. So when they're inspecting the property, they should be looking for signs of issues in relation to the legislation, which you and I are responsible for as property investors. If somebody gets hurt in our properties and we've done something wrong, that's down to us. And if we are in breach of HHSRS, then people could come after us and rightly so, because we've not done our jobs properly. Now, if you pass that to an agent who understands HHSRS, you're much safer because you can demonstrate to anyone that that they're doing the correct work and the job for you. The other thing that agents should do is they should find a really good tenant, because your business is your tenant. No tenant, no business. It's as simple as that. You have to have the right tenant for the type of property which you're presenting to the market. Now, we've all heard the horror stories. Somebody's been into the house, they've trashed it, they wrecked it, they took out all of the boiler and the heating system. We've all heard of these horror stories. The reason there are those horror stories is because either the landlord or the agent has not done the correct checks when they've moved that person in. And nothing's ever 100% accurate and 100% perfect, but there are simple checks that can be made to determine whether or not a tenant is suitable or not. And if that tenant is suitable, they shouldn't be moving into your house. Leave it empty, because it's the cost impact of someone who isn't suitable moving into your property is far greater than the risk of leaving your property empty for a few extra weeks or even a month or two. They can cause severe damage. So you want to be checking your letting agent's vetting system, understand how they vet tenants, understand how they check tenants, understand how they vet affordability of tenants, how they check that they can afford the property before you move them in. Because that's something that most agents that are good will be exceptionally good at, far better than you'll be able to do on your own. So use that and pay for it as well. If you have to pay more, pay for it, because it more than pays for itself. Trust me, from my experience, I've managed hundreds and hundreds of properties, millions and millions of pounds worth of stock. you absolutely have to make sure that the tenant vetting at the start is of the highest possible standard.
Then you mentioned they should visit the property. How often
Yeah.
do you think they should visit the property per year?
Okay. So it very much depends on the property type. So if we just take a sort of standard property, a single let property with a family in that property, you're probably looking at once every 6 months. There, you could argue maybe a little bit more frequently, depending on location and the prevailing market. But yeah, once every 6 months they should be there. And again, what they should not be doing is just popping in the property and saying hello. They need to be checking the property based on HHSRS, so the safety rating system for houses. If they're not, or they're not checking it to those standards, then you're going to end up with issues. So yeah, they should be there every 6 months. If we're talking about HMO, you're probably looking more frequently. I would suggest that as a minimum once every quarter, just by nature of the fact that there are more people there and it's a different dynamic in the property, and also the property is under much more pressure in terms of how hard it's being worked, so it needs to be checked more frequently. A little tip from me to anyone who's got HMO properties, and it's held me in brilliant. It's held me in good stead. It's been brilliant for me. Is to pay a cleaner to go in once every 2 weeks and just give that for free to the housemates, because having that cleaner going in once every 2 weeks is a second pair of eyes that are looking down that property, and they will point out any issues to you on a fortnightly basis. Just brief, say, check to make sure the fire extinguishers haven't been tampered with, make sure the smoke alarm's all okay, make sure nobody's growing any drugs or any antisocial behaviour in the house. And if you see anything, just report it back to me. So on the one hand, you've got a great promotion for your tenants. Look, you get free cleaner when you live in this house share. You don't have to clean the bathrooms that other people are using because we've got a cleaner to do that for you. But on the other hand, you've got somebody going in once every 2 weeks, is having a good look around the house, getting in all of the areas they need to get into, and checking to make sure the house is being cared for. So for the sake of £20-30 a fortnight, it more than pays for itself, and that's something that I do in all of my HMO stock.
Yeah, and yeah, that's good because I mean, like you said, you get an extra inspection at the time while the person is cleaning the house as well. So that's a good golden nugget.
It's important to remember that you can't. The legislation in the UK in terms of ASTs is they're entitled to the free enjoyment of the property without interference and the like. So, as a landlord, if it's deemed that you're being too nosy, you're inspecting too often, you can actually be breaking the law in doing so. So you've got to be extremely careful. What you can't do is say, I'm going to come every month and I'm going to inspect your house. Just not allowed to do it.
No. I would be like, is this person very creepy or what?
Oh yeah, exactly. But the law is on the tenant's side. So if it's deemed that you're harassing the tenant, you can go to court and you can be prosecuted for antisocial behaviour as a landlord. So it's very important that if you are gonna inspect, you've got a good reason to inspect, and that the frequency of that inspection is relevant to the type of property that you're renting and the type of tenant that you've got. The other thing is you can't insist upon inspections. You have no legal right as a landlord to insist on inspections, even if it's health and safety related. But it is always good if they do reject your visit or your inspection. It's very important that you keep a record of the fact that it was rejected. Gas safety certificates are the main one that I find. Tenants just aren't in when we book engineers to go out and do gas safety certificates, and there have been the odd occasion where we've actually not been able to get access right up to and beyond the deadline. So we've had to keep records to show that we've instructed gas engineers, they've called at the property, the tenant didn't give them access, and that way, if there is ever any litigation against you as a landlord, you've got that level of protection to demonstrate that you've made every effort to conduct the safety checks that are required.
Yeah, that's good. So what costs should we factor in?
Okay, letting agent prices differ depending on locations and also depend on standards. As a general rule, I tend to look around about the 15% of rent as a general rule. And now a lot of people will be sort of standing back with amazement when I say that, saying, "Goodness me, why would you pay?" I get my rental management for 7% or 6%, and that's fine if that's what you get and you're happy with it, and that's brilliant. But in my experience, the lower end of the market, the sort of 6-7% agents, are either novices or they're just not very good, and it's just you're not getting any value. You might as well just put the money in the bin. You know, you're paying that amount of money because you want a high standard of service. You don't want to have costs in the medium to long term if something goes wrong. And I just find that around the 15% mark, you get a professional agent who's qualified and knows what they're doing and delivers a great job to you, and actually saves me money because there's less risk of damage, less risk of tenants not paying because they just have better processes and systems in place. But as I say, it does vary. I certainly think in London and the southeast, you may be able to trim that down a little bit as a percentage, but as a general rule across the UK, around about 15% of the rent.
Yeah. So is this including HMO, or is it just normal residential buy to let?
HMO around about the same on HMOs as well. Around about 15 to 18 is probably about the norm on HMOs. But yeah, it's about the same. One of the things I find really funny is people get fixated with the percentage that they're paying to the agent, but then there are some agents that can achieve a much higher rent for you. They market properties for a higher amount because they're more prestigious, they've got better marketing tools. So whilst you might be arguing over a couple of percent, which is nothing really when you think about it, they could potentially get you 50 or 100 or 150 pounds a month more in rent because they're just better at it, or they might fill your property a month more quickly, which is a huge saving. So I'm more interested when I'm looking at management and when I'm benchmarking my own services against others in terms of how quickly can I rent? Am I performing better than others at renting? And can I achieve a higher rental value for a landlord? Because that's what matters. Another good example is a lot of agents don't have a annual increase in rent written into the contract, which is crazy because you should be getting 3, 4, 5%, whatever the rate of inflation is. You should be getting that applied to your rent every year that a tenant in a property, and yet lots and lots of agents just don't make provision for that and don't make their tenants aware and actually don't do it. So you can potentially lose hundreds and hundreds of pounds by not having that increase every 12 months. And again, if I'm paying good money, I would expect an agent to take care of that and do the communication of that for me. So that's why I pay more, and that's why I would pay more.
I thought that was like basic, that you have to go. No, I mean, otherwise with inflation, then the rent is it's much cheaper.
It's going down.
It's going down every year.
But no, they don't do it. And so in my agency, whenever we met with a tenant, we would always say, just to make you aware that these are all of the obligations that we've got. These are all the obligations you've got. Oh, by the way, also every year we make sure that your rent is increased based on the rate of inflation. So we won't have huge increases. We will review it, and in line with the rate of inflation, we'll adjust your rent basically in a tenancy. And they're very cool with it because we've been upfront and honest with them. What I do see happen is sometimes someone won't have a rent increase for 3 years, then suddenly the rent increases 20%. Now, the result is pretty much it's pretty much the same. If they would have had an increase each year, it would have been the same amount. But because it's such a large step, all of a sudden they get really upset, and then you run the risk of damage, late payment, non-payment, etc.
Yeah.
So make sure your agent knows what to do, what your expectations are in terms of annual rent review, and make sure they do it as well. Because it's better for the tenants. If I was a tenant and I was paying rent, I wouldn't want to have a sudden huge spike in my rent. I would much rather it be done annually in a way in which I can budget for and I can forecast.
That's how they do it here in Sweden. So it's annually. I think it's every April. So it goes up, and then the union, rental union committee or what. Well, I don't know how to explain it exactly. They have a discussion with the landlord, and then they negotiate, and then they set the figure. So sometimes it's maybe 1%, sometimes it's nothing, and then maybe in 2 years it's 3%. So, but we all are aware of it, and like you said, it's better to be aware of it in the beginning than like, okay, here you go. Next year, 15% increase your rent.
Well, I mean, can you imagine someone like Coca-Cola not increasing the prices of their fizzy drinks for 5 years and then suddenly doubling the price or putting them up 50%? The market just wouldn't stand it, and our market is no different to any other market. It just needs to be run properly, and it doesn't. And that's what I tend to find happens is, it's forgotten about, then it's realised, and then there's a miscommunication or misunderstanding and frustration on both parties. So it's daft, but it happens.
Okay, so what fees should be on the contract or that letting agent takes? So we have the percentage you said.
Yeah, so 15%, and you should have a setup fee as well, because you'd want people to pay a setup fee. I mean, it's a little different in the UK. Obviously, we had changes. The legislation changed depending on the location where you were, anywhere between 1 and 2 years ago, where we were able to charge for tenants a fee to do administration and to do a check-in and to do a credit reference check, and that the provision for that was taken away, so you weren't allowed to charge your tenants any longer, and it passed to the landlord, so it becomes a landlord's cost. So generally, anywhere between sort of 3 and 6 weeks of the rent is a general rule I would expect to see, and that should. I mean, it's all well and good paying for something, but you need to understand what it is you're paying for. So there's some things that I would expect as a result of that initial tenancy setup charge. I would certainly expect the estate agent to do the administration in terms of providing with a correct tenancy agreement. I would also expect to see a credit reference check being done on all people who are living at the property that are over the age of 18, because bad credit, bad problems. Yeah. So I expect to see that, and then not just a basic one, which we can all get arranged for a couple of pounds. I want a full credit check, so I want to be able to. I want the agent to do a full assessment of their credit file, including late payments and payment history and indebtedness and all that sort of stuff. And then the third one, and one that always gets missed, I've kind of got a bit of a reputation for being hard on this in my agency, is verify their employment. Because people will, when you're desperate to move into a property, you'll say absolutely anything you can in many instances to get it secured. Sometimes it's honest, but in my experience, sometimes with some people it's not. And affordability is important. Don't move someone into your house that can't, or your property that cannot afford it, because it's not fair on you, because they won't be able to pay you, but it's also not fair on the person moving in as well, because you're putting undue financial pressure on them. In the same way that banks can't provide excessive lending to people, you can't provide excessive property to people. So the employment check and verification of income is important, and you should make, as a general rule, you shouldn't really allow anyone to move into a property who doesn't earn at least 2.5 times the rent. All right, so if they're not earning, if their take-home pay is not equivalent to more than 2.5 times the rental value of that property, they are more than likely going to struggle to make those payments. So, the employment verification and understanding what they earn, that they're in permanent employment as well, rather than just on a fixed-term contract or on a 0 hours contract, is important as well. Particularly when you look at some of the higher value, larger properties where you may need a particular level of income and a guaranteed or a steady income at that level as well. So a good example of that with me was one person came to me, had a 4-bedroom property. They had tenants had been paying really well. They had good jobs, but they were on contract, and the contracts came to an end, and then they couldn't pay their rent. And they were lovely tenants, but they just couldn't afford the rent, and then all of the hassle that goes with it. So yeah, very important that you have that setup charge, and you have within that setup charge those services provided to you. And again, setup charge between 3 and 6 weeks of the rental amount.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good breakdown. So how do you find the tenants? The golden.
You know what? Actually, it's nothing to do with estate agents. This It's absolutely nothing to do with it. It's your fault if you can't get a good tenant, okay? Because the reason being is you're in a market which is based on supply and demand. So if you buy the wrong product, the market won't stand it. Okay, so if you're in a high concentration, high student concentration area where it's all student property, and then you buy a large property that isn't an HMO or hasn't got HMO planning or an HMO license, and you try and let it out to a family, you're obviously going to struggle. And in the same breath, if you're in a rural area where the property prices tend to be a little lower, there's a far better provision of social housing, and you try and create an HMO where there's absolutely no demand for it, you're never going to rent it. Now, they're the most extreme examples of property. But from me, and I try and teach this as much as I possibly can, and I write about it, and I've written a book about it. It's all about presenting the correct product to the market. So some areas, the demand is for 2-bedroom starter homes. Yep, and you can rent them all day long. So that will get you, by definition, if you do that, you'll get a good tenant because there's a market that's fighting to take that property off you. There's plenty of demand. There isn't enough rental stock. You can basically choose your tenant.
Yeah.
But if you go to an area where there isn't demand for small properties, where it's maybe a higher level of affluence, or there are larger families in an area, and the larger properties, sort of 3 or 4 bedroom properties, more in demand, then you're probably going to really struggle to let out your small property in that area. So you need to understand the local area and where the rental demand is, and buy to rental demand. And that's how I made money on my property portfolio over the years. It's not through anything particularly exciting or interesting and all of the fancy stuff that our industry talks about in terms of property investment. I just bought properties that people wanted, and I made sure I knew that they wanted them before I bought them. And that way, I got the best tenants. All I then needed to add into that process was an agency that checked to make sure that the tenant was what I was targeting my property at.
Yeah.
So if I was targeting young professionals and HMOs, I needed to make sure there was a market for that before I instructed the agent to go and find me that type of tenant. If I was targeting wealthier families near to, medical professionals near to a hospital, then I would need to make sure I bought a property and spec'd it to that standard where it will be attractive to that type of tenant, and then instruct my agent to target those markets. And a good agent will do that. So, it's important that your agent targets your tenants and gets you the right tenants, but it's down to you as the property investor. If you don't know the market, you can't do it.
So basically, it's best that you contact your letting agent before you buy a property and see, and they can tell you if there's demand for it, instead of buying it and then you're like, oh shit.
So I mean, you can actually use data to understand it as well. Now, I should mention that one of my businesses is called Ultimate Landlord, and I do market research for all locations in the UK. So, you can do the research yourself. It's not difficult, but I can provide support and services with that. You need to know what it is that you want to achieve from your business plan, and then that business plan determines what type of properties you're buying. Are you buying for cash flow? Are you buying for capital appreciation? Are you buying for a combination of that? How quick do you need it? How much capital have you got to put in at the start? All those things, they're your business plan. And then you then do your research on areas which tie into that business plan. So, if I only had £20,000 to kick off my investment, then I'm certainly not going to be investing in Greater London, because I'm just not going to be able to buy anything. And I know that because of the research, yeah. But and we should all know that. But then, there are similar scenarios all over the UK in different regions as well. So you need to do the analysis yourself. I'm more than happy to help if ever anyone wants any support or guidance in getting that initial research done. Then just drop me a line or message me. And then move into your agents, because really what you don't want is your agent will always say what they think you want to hear. So if you say, I've just bought this property in this area, what do you think? Or I'm thinking of buying a property in this area, what do you think? They're just going to say, yes, it works really well, or yes, we can rent it for you, because they just want your business. They're not impartial. So you, as the business owner, you've got to do that research first, and then tell the agent, and then basically verify it with the agent. I have decided as part of my business plan that I am going to buy an HMO in this area of Sheffield, and I want to make sure with you that you have sufficient demand to fill this property within time frames that work for me. So I expect the property to be from from empty to full within 6 weeks of it coming onto the market with you. Is that something that's achievable? Yes or no? Is much stronger than saying, do you think that HMOs work in Sheffield? Because they're just going to say, yes, please sign this contract now, and you're tied in with us for a year. And you don't want that. So, yeah, I just think you got to take responsibility and do it yourself first.
Yeah. So, why do letting agents have a bad name?
Because they don't do any of the stuff that I've just described. No. To be honest, I don't know. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you've got to think about what a letting agent does, right? So they take on responsibility for the HHSRS, of which there are like 104 checks that you're supposed to do as part of your tenancy agreement. They'll secure your deposit, they chase your rent, and make sure that your tenants are safe, make sure that your tenants are what they say they are. They do credit checks, they make sure that all of your safety certificates are all up to date. If they're not, they sort out. They vet your anyone that comes in and does maintenance. They make sure they've got correct and up-to-date insurance. They're a member of a professional body. They keep your money safe. They keep your tenants' money safe. They register deposit. I mean, they do so much stuff that, if I'm honest, I think probably over the next 3 to 5 years, we're probably going to see more letting agents and estate agents failing because they just can't make money because they've got to do all that work. And then those that are left will probably be the better ones and will probably start pushing prices up. But I think letting agents historically have had such a bad name because they've actually not done a lot of the things that I've just described. They've done them very badly. As a consequence of that, things have gone wrong. And then ultimately, who bears the burden of things that go wrong financially? It isn't the letting agent. It's the landlord or the property owner ends up having to foot the bill. So that's why, going back to earlier when I said, you've got to make sure you get the right estate agent or letting agent to manage your property, and they are doing what they're supposed to do. Even if you pay them a couple of pounds more each month, who cares?
Yeah.
You're protecting yourself such a huge amount of risk later on. And we've all heard the horror stories of, deposits going missing, rent being stolen, estate agents just disappearing, no checks being done, no secure, no safety checks, no certificates, all that sort of stuff. You hear that all the time, and that's why I think the industry's got a bad name. It's important to note that most other industries have like a professional body that you have to subscribe to, and you have to be trained. And up until very recently, you could just hang up a sign outside your office saying you're a letting agent, and away you go. It is changing now with licensing and a requirement for you to have CPD, but generally it's just been an unskilled market, which is madness really when you think about it, because you're dealing with livelihoods and safety and people's homes, risk of homelessness, risk of severe, carbon monoxide poisoning, gas explosions, electrical and electrocutions. There's just so much that's involved. So, do yourself a favor as a landlord or a property investor, and get someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to managing your property, because it's just a huge liability.
Yeah, that's true. And hopefully we'll get more professional, and like you said, that the bad apple will leave, and so it's just the good ones left.
The easiest one, honestly, the easiest way to check if an agent is good or bad, right, is ask them if they do HHSRS checks, and if they don't know what you've just said, walk away.
Yeah,
because a large amount of people in our industry just don't understand HHSRS, and yet it's been legislation since 2004.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
So where do you see most turnovers from the different property types?
Oh gosh, I've just done a report. I do a market read report. It's called the property market read. It's through Ultimate Landlord, and I analysed pretty much all aspects of property across the UK. Now, the UK is a little bit erratic at the moment because of coronavirus and the lockdown, and there's loads of noise out there. Some of the leaders in our industry have been saying, the property prices fall 20%, and it's the best time ever to buy property. And then what happened is property market didn't fall 20%; it's actually gone up. So their relevance to the conversation is negligible. Whilst they might be famous and they might have been around for a long time, they actually haven't got a bloody clue what they're talking about. I go back to it's all about the data and having robust data. So I haven't been able to do a forecast until very recently because there just wasn't any reliable data out there. But the data now is saying to me that actually there's a significant amount of pressure on the rental market in certain areas of the UK because there's a shortage of supply and a big spike in demand because a lot of people are losing jobs or changing jobs, so they need to change homes quickly. But also, some people may have lost their homes or may not be able to keep them all, so they need to move into the rental market as well. So the rental market is really quite heated at the moment and is changing very quickly. So low locations, northeast, I mean, they're the obvious ones. Not most places outside of London and the southeast generally are very busy at the moment. But there's a fundamental in this, and something that I've observed for many years is house prices almost all the time follow its house price increases follow or decreases follow rent increases or decreases, and because rent is a lot quicker, you can move far more quickly if you're renting than you can if you're buying. I'm starting to see big pressures on rental markets. Rental prices are increasing, and that is an indicator that I believe that house prices will follow suit in many areas. But the key thing is that certain properties in certain areas are seeing higher demand than others. So if I picked a couple, if you're looking up in the northwest, the big demand in the northwest of England at the moment is for 3-bedroom family homes. There's plenty of supply of 2-bed. There's plenty of supply of apartments and 1-bedroom properties. There's also plenty of supply of HMO. So the market there is desperate for sort of what I would determine a family home. The rental market is seeing increase after increase after increase. Stock is just turning over so quickly that I believe that that's an excellent market to invest in. I'm not qualified to give financial advice. I'm not FCA regulated. I can't tell you what to do, and I'm not giving advice. I'm just giving my thoughts on things. Yeah. So you need to do your own due diligence. But the market is, what I can tell you is the rental market in the northwest for large properties is high. And I can also tell you from the data analysis that I've done that the highest turnover area, so this is properties that are on the market and are selling, the highest or the fastest turnover location at the moment is actually where I live in Wales. So I think it's 10.9% of an estate agent stock is selling each month.
Wow.
So they're cycling the stock fast. Now the UK average is just under 6. So it's almost double the UK average of stock is being sold at the moment. Now, what do we think is going to happen there, folks? House prices, pressure on house prices. So again, all of this information, if anybody is interested in learning about this stuff, just come and talk to us, or go to the Ultimate Landlord page, or find us on Facebook. I actually give the market read data away for free. So why wouldn't you take the data off?
No brainer.
I've done this analysis. Absolutely. So just Ultimate-Landlord, and you'll find us, and you can get the market read for free. And I'm happy to share it with anyone who needs it.
So do you think overall, like in the UK, 3-beds, terrace house or semi-detached, or
again, it depends on the area. I mean, as a general, in the main investment area. So if you take outside of London, where it's a very different market. In the rest of the UK, the pressure, we've got increased unemployment, we've got a downturn in the economy, people aren't able to buy houses. So even people that were going to buy houses may hold off and they may rent for some time. Now, those people generally tend to be looking for start homes, smaller homes, but because of the nature of what we've just been through and the pressures on the economy and people's personal finances, there is going to be demand for rental property, which is leaning more toward joint incomes, so two partners working, or small families who are looking to rent before they buy. So that in because of that, I would suggest that again, 3-bedroom and above is an area of the market which you need to be looking at, particularly in locations where you look at. Do the research, get the data from Ultimate Landlord, and you'll be able to see whether or not it's going to work. And I think there's big opportunity there, particularly on rental returns, because I actually think that the gap between your sort of 1-bed flats and your smaller 2-bedroom properties isn't large enough when you step up to sort of 3- and 4-bedroom properties. I think there's there's a lot of headroom for rents to increase. And if rents increase, as we know, I mentioned earlier, rental inflation tends to be followed by house price inflation. So if I was looking to reduce risk for myself and my investments, I would be inclined to take the product or the property which is most in demand. And I can tell you now, the most in demand is that sort of 3-bedroom suburban type property. And some areas of the UK have absolutely ridiculously low house prices compared to the. If you take average household income and you look at household income across the UK and you look at how much as a proportion of household income the property price is, there's huge disparity. So you just got to look at areas where people are earning decent money, but house prices aren't that high, because they will be. And I'm seeing it already. But yeah, I make it sound easy to do. I suppose it is if you've been doing it for years, but if you're new to it, you need to educate yourself on how to do it. And once you do, you just massively minimize your risk.
Yeah, definitely. So what features are most desirable?
Okay. So I did a survey on Tenant. I survey tenants twice a year. And the most important things for tenants are lighting, and the lighting in the property. That's what attracts them, and also the flooring as well. So when they walk into the house, generally a decision is made on a property whether or not they like a property within a few seconds. So when you walk into that property, you need to be able to see really, be nicely lit with nice sort of contemporary lighting. Don't just have a light bulb dangling from a flex, because that doesn't do anything for anyone. And nice contemporary flooring. So you don't want to have, just a carpet or put some nice vinyl flooring down at the entrance to the property. That's where the decision is taken. So when you get a tenant through the door, if you want to let it quickly and let it ahead of the competition, you've got to have that little bit of wow factor when you walk in. And then in terms of desirable features, a modern kitchen and bathroom always helps with property. Not just in terms of rental, but also in terms of valuation as well, particularly for those of us that are looking to buy and refurb, refinance. Spend your money on the bathroom and the kitchen. Don't do a half job, because it does increase the value of the property by a significant amount more than you would probably put into doing a kitchen or doing a bathroom. So the kitchen and bathroom, lights, flooring, and then one of the things that's often missed with properties as well is its curbside appeal. So things like shrubs, look at the fence, make sure the fence is nice. Paint the house. It needs, if it's all grey and looking tired, stick some paint on it. These are all things that make it more desirable to the rental market, but also will make it more desirable in the medium to long term if you're choosing to flip or refinance. Spending that money in those areas sees a greater return on your investment.
What about furniture? I know in HMO you have furniture, but should you have furniture in buy-to-let? I've never seen it.
No, I would not. I know for many reasons. One, obviously, it's expensive and you don't really get a return. Two, most people have their own furniture or want their own furniture. Three, and probably the most crucial one, is you are, as a landlord, you're liable for that furniture. And that's a crucial one for me. So if you put furniture in your property and you don't have records of it being fire retardant and manufactured after a particular date, there's an element of risk there, because you're putting your tenant at risk. So you need to keep accurate records of the furniture and the equipment that you put into the property. You also need to pat test if you put electrical stuff into the property. If you've got a table lamp and stuff like that, pat tests need to be done. And I just can't be bothered with all of that. And I don't think you should be either. Most people will want their own things in a property. And an exception to that would be an HMO, where it is expected for a property to be furnished, and of course service accommodation as well. So they're different markets and they need to be treated as such. But for just your standard rental market, no, because even a good example. What was it? Somebody left in a property. I think it was a microwave and a toaster, a kettle. Small things, but when the tenant broke them, or they ran out, or they no longer worked, the tenant demanded replacements, and the landlord was obliged to replace them, because as part of the tenancy, you're entering a contract to provide those products as part of, or those items as part of the tenancy. So you have to replace them. So the worst thing you can do when you're moving a tenant in and say, do you want me to leave the furniture here? Because if the tenant says yes, you're responsible for it, even if it's all old and you don't want it anymore and you're just giving it to the tenant. By leaving it in the property, you ultimately remain liable for that furniture. So no, and if you are leaving furniture in a property for a tenant because they've asked for it, so cupboards, desks, beds, whatever it might be, but you have no intention of ever replacing them and you don't expect them back at the end of the tenancy, sell them to the tenant separately. Put a receipt together, list all the items, get the tenant to sign it to say that they have become legally responsible for those items. They own them, and that way there's no come back on you when things don't work or they break or they need a replacement. No one's going to come after you asking for replacements.
Yeah. Sometimes you hear that letting agents, when they, let's say if something breaks and you want to get a handyman or someone to come and check, you get many property investors say that they're overpriced. Is that something that you've heard as well, and why is it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely do. I think even without the letting agency in the equation, I think contractors they've got almost as bad a reputation as estate agents, but overcharging or being not doing a great job. So again, it's back to what estate agent or letting agent are you using, what have you briefed them on. So from my perspective, I couldn't really care about expenditure under £100, but what I don't want is lots of expenditure under £100. So you have to have an element of trust and an element of a relationship with your agent. But I would it's a difficult one because really, if work's being done, you should probably have a quote to start with, particularly if they're more expensive, and you should also have an itemised bill at the end as well. So don't just have electrical works in property £200, because that could be someone went in and changed the light bulb, and you've been charged £200 for it. So have an understanding of what you expect. So quote if it's over a particular value, and then an itemised bill at the end to make sure that it's done. But for me, I just don't want a phone call for fixing I don't know, a sticky window or something like that. I just want it done. But regularly review your accounts as well. Make sure that you're not being charged constantly for small jobs, because that's a sign that an agent's just trying to milk money off you. And I would be mindful of that. But it's not as bad as people make out. But in fact, an agent can often save you money, because quite often an agent will have preferential prices with some contractors.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably a good question to ask is, do you have any preferential rates with contractors? Because they may be able to offer you a discount on items.
Yeah.
I know certainly in my agency, I don't get quite good rates. I get exceptional rates on a lot of work because I use them myself. So and if the agent's taking a commission, they should show that should be open and upfront with you on that as well.
Yeah.
And what that.
So what pitfalls should we be aware of as landlords?
I think we've been through a fair few of them already. Buying in the wrong location. That's the biggest risk here. Is having the wrong property and presenting it to the market. If you've got the wrong property and you try and rent it, there'll be a list or a queue of agents trying to rent it for you, but all of them will do a bad job because it's the wrong product. In the same way that if I owned a shop and I bought the wrong product and put it on the shelf, it's just not going to sell. No matter how good I am as a shopkeeper, I'm never going to sell the product because the market doesn't want it. And the same applies with property. Buy the right property first, because there are so many people that come to me that have presented the wrong property to the market, and I have knocked them away and said, look, there's no chance I'm going to do anything with that. You've got to either refurbish it, or you've got to improve the quality, or you shouldn't have bought that. It hasn't got planning, it hasn't got permitted. That type of use isn't permitted. There's just so much that goes of what you do when you buy that property. That's where you make your money at the start. You make it when you find your property, and that's crucial. Now bring a letting agency into that process and bring a letting agent in so they can assist you with knowing what's required in a local area. But the buck stops with you. You buy the wrong property. If you try, it might work on paper, but if there is demand for it, it will cost you money. So biggest pitfall to be aware of is people who are buying properties where there's not sufficient demand for them and then expecting them to work.
Mm, okay. And we, as international investors or from abroad, what questions do you think we should ask?
Of an estate agent, of a letting agent.
Yeah.
I think I've already touched on one. You know, what do they do in relation to HHSRS? If they don't answer that question, don't use them. You want to be asking, do they have client money protection, and asking for evidence of it, because money goes missing in the property market time and time again. I hear of horror stories, and it can really ramp up quite quickly. So make sure that they got client money protection in place, and then ask them questions about the local area, what works and what doesn't work, and see if their knowledge matches your research. So if you're seeing that there's demand for smaller properties and they're saying you need larger properties, you know that they're probably not as skilled as they would like to think that they are. Then again, touched on earlier, you need to be asking questions as to how they vet the tenants, what vet processes are in place. So again, just as a reminder, we're looking for evidence of credit checks, evidence of employment verification, which are crucial.
Yeah. So we have come to the fun part. Your favorite book, favorite movie, and TV series.
Oh gosh, well, my favorite book is just me being terrible here, so you might have to end our conversation. My favorite book is a book called Property, Truth or Dare.
Okay.
And the reason it's my favorite book is it's my book because I wrote it. It's available on Amazon. So grab that, because that all of the crazy stuff that I talk about is in there, and it's all about. It's my favorite book because I wrote it, and obviously it's mine. But it's also my favorite book because it's all of the nonsense. It just pushes a big red line through all of the nonsense that you hear about when it comes to investing in property in the UK.
Yeah.
It's just nice and simple. And all of the stuff that we've talked about on this call today, and more besides, is contained in that book. So it's a bit of a story, but it's also an extremely useful guide. You know, you understand how I built my portfolio up with very little risk, and very easily, actually, with very little money as well.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite book. I haven't written or directed or starred in a movie, but we're safe on that.
Soon.
No, it's not gonna happen. I know. Movie. That's a good question. I like quite a lot of films, really. Trying to think what my favorite movie is. I got from my childhood. I really liked the Back to the Future trilogy, just because it was weird but fun. So yeah, probably that. Just I got a bit of a thing for the 1980s. I quite like 1980s stuff. So it's a very 1980s movie.
Okay.
So I'm fond of that. And then in terms of TV series, continuing that theme, really. There's the BBC made a TV series called Ashes to Ashes. I think before that it was called Life on Mars, but I'm fond of the Ashes to Ashes series. It's got a police officer in there called Gene Hunter who just basically does everything on a whim, and then it's about his ego, and then another person who's also stuck with him in the 1980s, is trying to do things the way we do them, or we're supposed to do them now, in terms of using evidence and data and insight and all that stuff, and the jump between it. I just think it's great. So yeah, that would probably be my fave TV series as well. But I'll be honest, I don't really watch a lot of television because I don't. I tend to find most of the stuff that's out at the moment is
crap.
A bit traumatized for me. Yeah, I'm more of a fact evidence sort of person. So yeah, I'm sure there's something. I think anything else I've seen recently that was quite good.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of anything.
No, I'm more a documentary person as well. Or if it's a movie that's based on a true story, then it's
so.
Definitely. So, John, how can people get hold of you? The book, email, website, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, everything. Put it all out there.
All you got to do is remember, ultimate Landlord with a hyphen in between them. Ultimate Landlord. So Facebook, Ultimate Landlord page. Google Ultimate Landlord. You'll find my website. You can email us. It's info@ultimatelandlord, which is, we've got a hyphen in between the ultimate and the landlord.com. You can't phone me, but you can message me on Facebook, which is fine. You can come along and meet me. So I do regular seminars. I do evening events around the UK. If you go into Eventbrite and you look for Ultimate Landlord, you will find all of my events on Eventbrite. And I also do one-day courses where we try to find the best possible properties for you in the areas where you're investing. So they're normally based in South Wales. It's a one-day workshop where I take you through all of the stuff that I do. And I think the next one is on the 5th of September, but it's almost sold out. And they tend to be every month. So you can come along to those as well and see me. Trying to think what else there's. Oh, and you can read my book, Property Truth or Dare, which is available on Amazon. And it's a great read. And if it isn't, to be honest, the best value you'll get from what I do and what I've experienced is to come along to a one-day course or come to an evening event and see me. I do a market read, so there's market intelligence which is available to you, and you can have that for free. Again, just email info@ultimate-landlord.com, and I'll send you a copy of the market read. But it's much better to meet face to face, with obviously assuming that the lockdown situation doesn't get any worse in the UK.
Yeah.
Come along to a one-day event, and I teach you all of the stuff that I've done. I'm not saying that it's perfect. It's not meant to be, but it is more up to date than a lot of the stuff that's out there. And some people have had some really, really good results by just thinking a little bit differently about how they invest.
Yeah.
So that's open to anyone really, and it's normally based in Swansea in South Wales on a Saturday.
I'm gonna meet you when I come over next time. When the lockdown, this quarantine stuff is gone, because now I can't stay 2 weeks.
It's not the best, is it?
So I'm definitely gonna meet you. I met you on our online event, so better to meet you face to face.
Yeah, I really look forward to it, and don't be put off by all the scaremongering in the property market, particularly in the UK at the moment. The bottom line is it's simple. Okay, there's too much demand and not enough supply in many areas of the UK. All you've got to do as an investor is understand where there is more demand than there is supply, and I can help with that. And then you will perform well as a result of, far better as a result of focusing on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't be put off. There's a lot of people talking down the property market in the UK at the moment, but they will be proven wrong. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, then.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. And people,
okay, cool.
Don't be stressed. Invest.
Very much so. That is very true. No need to be stressed.